Hey everybody, hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the entire Face album from Jimin. Now, you may have been in stream, you may have seen what happened. Unfortunately, my stream kept crashing, things kept freezing, and I had to start and stop it 4 different times. And for that, I do apologize. I'm not sure what was going on with my system. Hopefully, I have it fixed right now. But what I'd like to do is just go back to the beginning of this stream, back to the first couple videos I watched, and go through the whole thing. The Dream Team was nice enough to put together a whole list for us here, everything surrounding this album, and I do want to record it for everybody. It's just a bummer I can't do it live. Generally, I like to do it live to get people's opinions and their theories on things, and it's kind of cool to bounce ideas off people. But apparently for today, we're just going to have to do it this way, and for that, I'm really sorry. But let's pull this up over here, and let's basically start this thing over. I'm probably going to go over some things that I already said about the first couple songs, maybe dive a little bit deeper just to keep this interesting for people. But it just kind of is what it is. So let's start with the first video here, which is, I believe, the first track. And this is Face Off. Now, obviously, this isn't the music video or anything for it, but it's just kind of like a fun little video people put together. I think it's cool how it kind of started off with the instruments kind of morphing a little bit. It sounds like they're almost drunk themselves.
Alright, I guess the blame is on me. 지금 내 모습을 봐. 사람 모조리 같이. 사람을 믿는 걸. 지독한 악몽이 시작인 걸.
Beautiful intro.
Tonight I don't wanna be sober. But it up, it's a fucking over. Break it down, break it down. 이건 흔한 나의 story. Get it down. 미치는 소리 지르다, yeah, yeah, yeah. Put it out, put it down. 밤이 다 끝날 때까지. Get it down. 너의 흔적까지 다, yeah, yeah,
The bass is awfully heavy for like a slow jam like this. It's called a hardstyle bass. The vocal modulations here are interesting. I'm going to retouch on this. This is what I initially already said. And at first I thought maybe Jimin's talking to haters or people that want him to be a certain thing or fit in some kind of a box or whatever. But, as I got to songs like Alone and stuff, I started to realize that I think what he's doing here is actually kind of like his inner demons coming out and saying that he's not good enough or he's pathetic in some kind of way, or he should just fit a certain mold because that's what sells and that's what, he is. It can probably be very easy to lose yourself, in personas and in your music and in who the public thinks that you are. And I would imagine it'd be quite difficult, to put, so much media forward and, get such, loving, reception back from that. And then when you try new things, if it doesn't go as well as you thought it did, or there's some pushback or whatever, you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be that person or whatever. And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is it's so easy to get lost. And we all know he's a workhorse, dude. Like he puts everything into this art. He puts everything into learning and trying to be the best that he possibly can. And I think a big contributor to that, a big reason for that, is because he does have these inner voices that might be saying, maybe you're not enough. Maybe you are pathetic. And that's just kind of what I'm getting off of some of this album. And it's really sad. It's really hard to listen to. It's difficult to digest. But because of that voice, we've gotten some really incredible music and some really incredible moments. And so it's weird. It's kind of like this double-edged sword. You know, obviously I wish nothing but the best for the dude. You know, I want him to be happy. I want him to feel loved. I want him to have self-love, and I want him to be just happy with himself and what he has accomplished. But I think there's more to Jimin's story than maybe we all realize.
Even though you test me, 날 신경 믿어. Even though you kill me, 날 더 찔러도. I don't care about you, 저 같은 그날까지도. 아름다운 밤이야, 다 가진 것 같아. Tonight I turn on, I'll be sober. Party up, it's a fucking no. Break it down, break it down. 이건 흔한 나의 story. 미친 듯 소리 질렀다, yeah, yeah.
I love the guitars.
이 밤이 사끝날 때까지 너의 흔적까지 다, yeah, yeah.
And it even like drunkenly kind of fades out like that. You know, alcohol is definitely kind of a theme in this album a little bit. You know, he talks about drinking and kind of losing himself or whatever. And I don't think it's the main theme of this, but I think that there's like a certain part of him just being like, I want to kind of just let go and enjoy the moment and do whatever. And I think he uses alcohol to do that from time to time, you know. Some of my favorite parts of this, honestly, is when he swears with that classic Jimin twang. I don't think I've heard that before, and it's weird because it's like so like auditory, like pleasing, you know. It's an eargasm, you know, but with like such a harsh tone, you know. It's a weird contrast. I do appreciate it and do like it. Anyway, I think this is a fantastic opener to the whole album. It kind of sets the stage for what we're about to get into a little bit. And it touches on some of the themes in very subtle ways. Layering is fantastic. His voice is obviously fantastic. I enjoy the circus kind of opening and kind of like the cartoony type of feel mixed together with like soaring electrical guitars. Like there's a lot of really cool layers for this song. And of course, Jimin sounds fantastic. All right, so let's move on to the next one, and it's an interlude. So this kind of surprised me. An interlude right away in the second track. This is normally something you get halfway through an album. But not so much on this one. It's cool because it continues off of the first track a little bit. It reverses right into it. And it's got these like really different kinds of sounds. You have the crowd cheering from the 2022 Busan concert, and like this crazy high they must feel. And then you hear like more personal sounds, or sounds you might hear just by yourself, from knocking to water dripping to, little atmospheric type of sounds. The whole thing definitely feels kind of like a dream. But let's just give it a quick listen. I love the soft Rhodes too. The Rhodes keys, the instrument itself has like a woodwind type of effect. The breathing almost sounds like an anxiety attack.
와, 진짜 너무 보고 싶었습니다. 네, 이렇게 만나게 되네요. 여러분, 지민입니다.
actual woodwinds coming out of it. It's like the roads themselves morphed into that sound. And then it fades out. Oh wait, there's water pouring too. Okay, so next we're moving on to Like Crazy. But before we move to that, I want to talk about that interlude just a little bit here. I really do enjoy the contrast in sounds and in atmospheric values. You know, we go from like these super wide woodwinds and atmospheric strings and everything to literally just hearing him gulp down some water and, you know, these really personal sounds. So it kind of goes back and forth. Up until about this point, I started to really notice that the album really does feel like a dream. This just, if dreams had sounds like soundtracks to them, it would sound like this. And I think it's done that way by design. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the second music video here, Like Crazy. And this was kind of surprising. I mean, obviously I've already heard Set Me Free Part 2, and I think that really surprised everybody with how aggressive it was with the rapping and the auto-tune, and just like the aggressive beats and everything. It wasn't really what people were expecting. It's actually kind of surprising that he released that as a single first. But oh, also in the beginning of this one, I noticed some things too. Bear with me here for a second because I'm kind of grasping at straws. Let me pull it up here. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna play something once the song starts back to back, and it's from BTS called Black Swan. And the reason I want to kind of show these two things is I think this might be a small little Easter egg. The beginning guitar part has a similar effect on it and also a similar progression. Now, it's not exactly the same melody, has more of a strumming effect or strumming on this one, but they're very, very close. So I think this might be an Easter egg or some kind of throwback. Let's take a listen. Okay, so now that you know what that guitar kind of sounds like, I want you to listen to this real quick. Not so much the main notes, but the root notes behind it. Now, I might be grasping at straws here, honestly. You know, it might mean nothing or whatever. It might have just been an effect that he's partial to with the guitars and his voice and everything. But I do see like a similarity here in progression and effects use and very, very similar melodic values. So it's definitely worth noting. I think it might be a little Easter egg thing, but that's just my own personal opinion. It's also kind of cool too, the samples that he used in the beginning of this. Now, I believe, let me go over here to this document over here. It actually kind of explains it for me. Like Crazy. This is the main track that starts the dialogue from one of Jimin's favorite films starring Anton Yelchin and Jennifer Lawrence, after which the song is named. But the voices in the track are by voice actors. I think we could last forever, Lawrence says at the song start. I'm afraid that everything will disappear, Yelchin replies. Jimin uses this clip as a launch pad into lyrics that are painful realization of losing someone he loves and refusing to wake up from that dream. Let's check it out.
She's saying, baby, 생각하지 마. There's not a bad thing here tonight. And baby, 떠나도 좋아. 있어, 오늘까지만. Watch me go. And I 적셔 밤새도록 away.
I think when we get that, like, I'm calling it like the Predator frame, when everything goes infrared there, I think we're seeing him going into his daydreaming thing. And again, I think dreaming has a lot to do with this album and it has that vibe. And if I remember correctly, when I was doing part of this live, some people said that during an interview, he even kind of expressed that a little bit. But I think it's important to kind of point out there. Also, look at this room. There's just mud everywhere. I think this is where he's at, or where he feels he's at. It's not really where he wants to be. You know, he feels he thinks of himself as being alone in this room, and that's kind of ugly. I don't know. I think this album is really letting us deeper into the psyche of this man, and some of the issues or inner struggles that he goes through.
Watch me go, and I just away.
This is where he wants to be.
And she has
suggestive, but it's super fun. It really is. This is him just getting lost in the lights and forgetting about everything and trying to enjoy the moment. I love okay, a couple things here. First off, I love the arpeggiated hardstyle synth mixed together with this very vaporwave-esque type of song. I think it's cool. It's definitely has like a trendy coffee shop or a trendy bar type of vibe to it. I can just see myself like in this kind of club, or maybe not myself now, but like years ago when I was younger, just kind of chilling out in a place like this. It's very, I don't know, it's catchy. I wanted to pause in this frame here too, because this little laser beam or light keeps going over his face, and I'm kind of reminded of Proof. Yeah, like the photos from Proof where they have like the laser going on the face or different angles or everything like that. I kind of get this vibe from that. Again, maybe an Easter egg, maybe a throwback, but this is definitely worth noting. Now, the black stuff on his hands and he's sitting on like the mud or whatever, I'm not sure exactly what kind of significance that has. Maybe time will tell. Some of my favorite lines from this video are getting lost in the lights and just kind of like forgetting it all and just wanting to be in that place. This is great. I think this is going to be an instant hit right here, guys. I think this is it has like that song of the summer kind of vibe to it. I can just see this. I can see myself playing this with like the top down in the car and driving out to the beach or something and just blasting this tune. I think it's kind of cool, but it does have a darker contrast. And so far, this album has a lot of dark contrast to it. with the fluttery, bright, beautiful guitars. It feels nice, and like the 4 on the floor up tempo swing from the beat. It feels kind of dancey and kind of chilled out. And again, this whole album has like that dreamscape type of vibe to it. But if you really start to pay attention to these lyrics, and especially the video here showing the two contrasts of where he wants to be and where he actually is, I can't help but feel for the guy a little bit. Now, the next one is pretty much where the stream completely died. And it's probably why I'm kind of monotoned right now and why I'm a little sad. Yeah, it sucks the stream died, but more so for this next song. It's not an easy listen. It's very, you know what? Let's just go through it and I'll break it down. The next one is called Alone. And again, obviously this isn't an official video. It's just something the Dream Team put together for us with the lyrics on it. It's funny how like a lot of these songs too, it kind of like, it feels like they're morphing into each other. The album is very cohesive. And if I had to say up until now, it almost feels like the feeling between the songs, reversing and going into something else, and just all of the slight modulations and layering, it almost feels like this album could be one song. And I think that's honestly the way I want to take this album.
눈앞에서 웃고 있는 모두가 무섭게 느껴져 도망치려 했지만 갈 길을 잃어버린 지금의 너 스위치에 잠들고 기억이 나지 않을 때 생각해봤어 지금 내가 뭘 하고 있는 건지 왜 나만 이런 건지 아니 모두가 그렇지 매번 괜찮은 척하는 내 모습이 한심하게 느껴져 똑같은 하루가 또다시 흘러가 얼마나 버텨야 나 돌아갈 수 있을까 차갑고 쓸쓸한 밤 아무 생각 없이 불 꺼진 방 안을 걸어 나 홀로 괜찮다 했었지만 점점 날 잃어가는 것만 같아 Day and night 반복되는 거 Bad twilight 외면하지만
This is the point in the album that I really start to feel, it's less of Jimin talking about haters or critics or whatever, and more about the inner struggle, his inner demons that he's dealing with. If you listen closely through all these tracks, when he's going back and forth or talking with someone or something negative is being said about him, whether it's he's pathetic or he's lying or something like that, the vocals are modulated, in a distorted way or in a way that's kind of like crunched down in the mix. And I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be kind of like, these inner bad thoughts that are kind of coming out and questioning himself in some kind of way. This is, on surface level, a beautiful song. Sonically, you have beautiful piano tones and guitar, and Jimin's voice sounds crisp and clean. And this is what everybody likes. But the thing is with Jimin is you cannot take him at face value. There's layers to this dude. And as beautiful as this sound, the downside of the contrast to this is that he is actually really opening up and being incredibly vulnerable with people and willing to, open a scab, open a wound and share it with everybody, which is an incredibly brave thing to do. He doesn't need to release an album like this. He doesn't need to release songs like this. He's really just expressing himself in an honest way, which is incredibly rare nowadays. Let's let this thing play out.
변명을 해봐도 또 눈을 감고 외면을 해봐도 알잖아 힘이 망가진 걸 되돌릴 수 없는 걸 똑같은 하루가 또다시 흘러가 쓸쓸한 말 아무 생각 없이 불 꺼진 방 안을 걸어 나 홀로 난 괜찮다 했었지만 점점 날 잃어가는 것만 같아 Day and night 반복되는 fall Bad twilight 외면하지만 Day and night 반복되는 fall Make it right It's gonna be alright
Yeah. So far, that is the most difficult song on the album to listen to. Dude, man, I get emotional when I hear this. I get emotional because he didn't need to do this. He could have just given us a bunch of different pop songs that would have been fun and dancing around, and he could have just used that classic twang in a way that's just relatable and would have just made everybody insanely happy. But they don't do this. These guys don't do this. They share their vulnerabilities. They share honesty with us in a way that is even sometimes self-deprecating, and they're not afraid to do it, or they are afraid to do it. They're saying they're afraid, and they're doing it anyway because they feel like that's the right thing to do. And it's admirable, and it's something we should, we shouldn't just like take note of and respect, but it's something maybe we should even try and implement in our own lives, something maybe we should try and do with each other. Maybe we should all try and be more vulnerable and honest and open with each other, and just less about getting lost in the lights and less about getting lost in Instagram filters or, how many subscribers you have or whatever your clout thing is or whatever it is anybody's trying to do, and just kind of cut through all that bullshit and just get to the nitty gritty of how you feel and who you are and, what is actually happening with you. At least that's how I take it. And to me, I mean, I just respect the fuck out of this, man. All right. So the Dream Team, they probably put some information together on this. Oh no, that's the other one. Sorry. It's from another one. All right. So Alone, a soft, slower ballad that reveals Jimin's fear of falling behind during the pandemic. It is somehow comforting to know that even one of the world's biggest sensations also feels and can unapologetically express the repetitive feeling of lack and loneliness. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's crazy too. When I heard this album, kind of centered around the pandemic and everything like that, and it had, vibes surrounding it. I wasn't sure how to take it, but even listening to these songs, like it feels like, yeah, it can be reminiscent of that, but it can still be messages and, and sayings and learnings and teachings of things we can all kind of take note of. It's beautiful, man, but it's one hell of a contrast. Don't just fall for those beautiful chimey tones and beautiful voice. You got to dig a bit deeper. Oh, man. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. Obviously, I've seen the next one, Set Me Free Part 2. This is what started it all. This is what broke the internet, man. This jam right over here. And, man, it's even more surprising hearing this now, knowing the context of, almost all the album that I've heard so far and where this album sits in it. Because this song, to me, so far feels like an anomaly. It feels like it has that kind of vaporwave, dreamy soundscape to it. But at the same time, like it almost just feels like it doesn't quite fit in a way. And the reason in him coming out and releasing this as like the first, music video, the first taste of the new album is such an interesting way to do it. I guess I still don't quite understand it just yet. But let's go through and listen to this one more time. All right, it's already got 45 million views. Hold on a second. Let me check what the Dream Team has to say about this. I have my own theories now, and now hearing the album and knowing and thinking it has more to do with something else. All right, here we go. Here he overcomes his internal battles and feels confident in newfound freedom as he repeats lyrics like "Set me free" and "Finally free," and he tells the critics to get lost while he enjoys his prime time. Okay, that's pretty much the basic of what I got from the internet and my reaction that I put out there. But again, now knowing the context of what this album kind of is and just some of the recurring themes, Again, I feel like it's part of this might be a conversation with himself. Let's see. In the grand scheme of things, it feels like a wake up. It feels like we've been sleeping up until now.
I got a good time, yet time to get mine. Hammers me roll, hell and shit night. I never stop, I never stop. It gets you with me. I never stop, open your arms, finally free. Oh yeah. 이렇게 멈춰서 not yet. 돌아보지 않아. Not yet. 날아가 butterfly. Finally free. 더 이상 아파도 숨지 않아. 미치지 않기 위해 미치려는 걸. 지나간 나를 위해 손을 들어. Now set me free. It set me free.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things thematically, in the progression of this album, it really feels like at this point he's waking up. Everything else has been kind of a dream or a daydream.
It set me free. It set me free. It set me free. I get
Oh man.
face in the mirror, but I got no time to fix it. Just let me go. Hey, oh, just get out my way. Shut up, go, my way. I get. She's acting like prime time. Forget.
Beautiful.
All that time.
And I appreciate the contrast.
미치지 않기 위해 미치려는 걸. 지나간 나를 위해 손을 들어. Now set me free. It 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 set me free.
Okay, yes, it is still an anthem. Yes, I still think it's an absolute anthem. But now having a better understanding of, the sonic soundscape of the album and some of the major themes of the album, it's a different kind of celebratory feel that I get when I hear this song. I'd like to share my final thoughts on this album. It's only 20 minutes long. So I like to think of this as really one long Jimin song. And when I put this together in a playlist, I'm going to make sure to listen to the whole thing back to back and just have this be what I think it's going to be. Even though it's short, there's definitely recurring themes and there's messages and all of that fun stuff, both sonically and lyrically. It honestly feels like you're stuck in a dream through most of this album. A daydream or a drunken haze or falling asleep or not quite in your right mind. This album, touches on, bad thoughts that can be stuck in your mind and, debilitating thoughts and how you can be your own worst enemy, your own worst critic. It touches on a lot of that. And it even shows it with the morphing vocals, when it goes from, in Alone where he says everything's going to be fine or it's going to be okay. And then you hear the modulated voice saying lie, 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 to the back and forth. Whenever you hear a modulated voice kind of talking with him or him singing back and forth, it truly does feel like it's almost a different character or a different version of himself kind of coming down on himself. And we hear that in Alone, Set Me Free. And we also even hear it in the beginning with Face Off. It's very, very interesting. I like where this album starts. It has almost like this crazy morphing circus type of theme with Face Off, and then it quickly morphs into the interlude. I thought it was interesting to have an interlude in the second track, but thematically it really fits. It's really trying to drive home. He's in this dreamscape. There's just It's very dreamy. Then we move on to Like Crazy. So Like Crazy has almost a type of vibe to it. It's got like this vaporwave type of sound and these sharp, aggressive, synthetic arpeggiated tones that are just kind of going back and forth. But it works really nice with his, really silky smooth vocals and classic Jimin twang. And it feels like almost a light celebration. He just wants to get kind of lost in the lights and forget about it all and just enjoy the moment. But at its core, it's kind of sad. It swings back around to him back in that same room, that kitchen. And this time he has a mud on his hand that's, usually just on the floor. I think there's a lot of symbolism there, and I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm looking forward to really checking into it. Then that leads us to Alone. This is a hard listen. This is a dark listen. At first I might think, okay, well, it's beautiful. You have these, chimey piano tones and acoustic guitar, and Jimin sounds fantastic in this acoustic settings. But once you really start to dive into lyrics and understand them, then you start to really kind of feel for the dude. And you start to also really respect the fact that he's being incredibly honest and open and vulnerable in a very deep way. Again, he doesn't need to be doing this right now. It doesn't feel, he could just be releasing pop tunes that just makes everybody happy and everybody wants to bounce or whatever. But he's going at this in a more personal way. Remember, this is his first solo album. This is his first step out on his own. And he's not exactly giving people what they wanted. He's showing a more real side of himself. Now, I think any real army is going to appreciate this and love this for that reason, just because we're kind of used to it with BTS tones and BTS messages and everything. But I think on a grand scheme of things, it's definitely an artistic risk. Then we move on to Set Me Free Part 2. So this is what started the whole thing off. And at first I was confused by this, and a lot of people have conflicting opinions on what this song is. But once you start to understand where this sits in the album, how it, climaxes to this point, how the entire album really just apexes in this crescendo right to this point, it really becomes a celebratory anthem. Again, there still is that modulated tone with the rapping and everything, and I still do think that's his inner monologue going back and forth with him with his natural tones. But at the end of the day, it feels like he's overcoming it, and he's just basically saying, fuck everything, fuck everybody, I'm just going to do me, which is kind of fun. But at the same time, there is still that inner monologue, that inner dialogue going back and forth and diving into it. I think on surface level, you might think this is just a beautiful, really relaxing, chilled out, maybe coffee shop album. But once you pull back the layers and once you really try to dive deep into what this is and the themes and what he's actually saying, you're going to realize this is a very deep album. This is not an album that's frivolous or throwing away. This is truly an artist coming out on his own 2 feet and expressing not just what people want, but expressing himself in a very real, very brutal, and very vulnerable way. Yeah, I love it. I think it's beautiful through and through. I think this is fantastic, and it's just another reason why I'm excited to be a BTS fan, or ARMY, or whatever you want to call this fandom. I think it's gorgeous. I think it has beautiful contrast. I think the videos have awesome cinematography. I think the sound design is just gorgeous, especially with the theme of this dreamscape going on. I think that's awesome. I think the implementation of organic electronic instruments really kind of highlights that theme of the dreamscape, and it does it in a very, very creative way. And I think Jimin has really just never sounded better, honestly. And it's great to hear it in his own voice, in his own words, and just giving us something that's just real and true to him that we get to kind of dissect and dissolve or take lessons from in our own lives. Jimin's Face is absolutely beautiful, and I love this album. If I had one gripe, it's too short, but even then, maybe in the grand scheme of things, as this just being one song in my opinion, I think it's beautiful. So yeah, those are my final thoughts. Again, I'm very sorry that the stream went down here today. If you're interested in checking out the Jimmy Fallon performances or the interviews or the secret track I didn't get around to doing, I'm going to do it on Patreon. And possibly release it over here on YouTube at some other time because I don't want to flood you guys with a bunch of BTS stuff. But I'm going to be sure to do that right now. But I just wanted to kind of share my final thoughts. Anyway, again, really sorry about today's stream, and hopefully you enjoyed my reaction. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful night, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.